was a quick week for us. We spent, I think Trina or Pastor Rich was saying, we spent a couple of days in Kansas or Missouri. Is it weird? I don't know. I thought we were in Kansas City, but it's like in 2 states, and they're right next to each other. I really didn't know where I was for like 3 days. I kept trying to tell people that those were different places. I mean, Kansas and Missouri, I don't know. I didn't know where I was, but that's, for those of you who know me, that's a normal thing, right? I never know where I am. And so it was a real quick week, and we got here, and this is just a little story. Last night I went to print my sermon out, and my printer didn't work, right? And I was bummed about it. I didn't know what to do, so I had to wake up extra early or whatever and run over to Trina's. But it was printing. When I would go to print, like the print page, it was like in German. And it was the only part that was in German, but once you get like a program in a different language, how do you change that? Right? Because you can't read it to figure it out. And so I was just blown out by that. I wanted to share that with you because maybe somebody relates to that situation. But that's how my morning started. So my sermon is in blue ink this morning because Trina's printer was out of black ink. So that was one of those mornings. But who was here last week? And that's awesome. Were you blown away by that? Just give it up for that for last week. That was such a big day. It was such a big day. And we had at least, I think, 15 people that either made first-time commitments or recommitted their life to Jesus. Is that awesome? Is that awesome? I mean, that's fantastic. That's fantastic. And so it was a huge day, and how we talked about Noah, how he made that huge decision to follow God, and those people made huge decisions last week. And I'm sure that there were more that didn't raise their hands, that made decisions to get back with Jesus last week. And so where we left off last week, remember we're on this big Noah kick and the whole flood thing, right? And I've been reading for a month. You guys know Noah pretty well now, right? For those, I mean, you know Noah pretty well. And so where we left him last, he was on the ark, right? And the boat had lifted off the ground. And now he's just in this boat, right? He's on this boat in the middle of the water. And that's all that's left. And the entire world is him in this boat in the middle of, I guess you consider it the ocean. The world is just a big pile of water. And so we're going to pick up where we left off in Genesis chapter 7. Verse 23, it says, "Every living thing on the face of the earth was wiped out. Men and animals and the creatures that move along the ground and the birds of the air were wiped from the earth. Only Noah was left and those with him in the ark. The waters flooded the earth for 150 days. And in chapter 8, verse 1, it says, "But God remembered Noah." And I've read that a lot. And I remember when I first was really getting into reading and studying the Bible, I read that, and I thought, so did you forget? Like, in order to remember, like I was thinking, well, he must have forgotten. I was like, first off, that's all that's left. Right? I mean, how do you forget the only people that are left in the face of the earth? And that's what I was thinking. But I was reading it, and I was reading it wrong. And it says the correct understanding of that phrase, God remembered Noah, would be God didn't forget Noah. And so we misinterpret that like God doesn't forget us. And so they're on this boat for like 150 days, right? And those people on that boat, especially talked about last week, the in-laws or the kids' parents, or the sons' wives. They're on this boat for 150 days, and then they have to be thinking, man, God's forgot us. There's no way. Where is God in this? I'm on a stinky boat with some stinky animals on a stinky sea, right? That's what I'm thinking. I'm like, man, after 150 days, like you would even struggle counting the days. Where is God? And so that's why he writes, but God remembered them. And so I was thinking about this story in my life, and because there's times in our lives when we really feel like God's forgot us. Right? Anyone been there? No one's been there. Yeah. When you just feel like, man, what am I doing here? What is going on? And I was telling the story at the CMA conference earlier this week. It was I was an associate pastor at a church, and we were about a year year in there, and things were going really great. The youth group, I was in charge of the youth, and the youth group was growing really well. And then things were just going really well. And then some things happened, and the church started just hemorrhaging financially. I mean, just going down the tubes financially. I remember at one board meeting, they said, we have roughly 9 months before we close the doors, the way things are going. And so I was the one on that. I was like, you know what, I think we can do this. And so we called in our state director, Randy Spence, and he came in and he met with us and he said, and they were talking about some different options. What can you do? How can you stay afloat the way things are going? And he said the first thing, he said, the only thing you don't want to do is cut your pastor's salaries. That's when he came in and he said that. And he gave us some other options. He said, listen, if you cut your pastor's salary, you're cutting your throat, is what he said. And so he left. And so the board, after they left, they cut our salaries. Right? You saw that coming, right? It's the first thing they did. And so I got a part-time job, and we started working. And for about 3 months, we were doing okay. And we met again. We said, we're in the same situation. Nothing's changed. And so I took the youth on a trip to San Antonio, and we were with a couple of the youth groups, and we were meeting out there. Had a blast. You know, David Crowder was there, Chris Tomlin was there. Amazing time in San Antonio, and that was right after the Cavs, you know, got swept in the finals. So I wasn't glad I was there, but I was making the best of it. But we were there meeting with the youth, and there was a board meeting going on that they had scheduled at the church while I was gone. and I was sitting there with all these youth in a circle, and I got a text message from my cousin, who's on the board. And she said, Carson, there's nothing I can do. They're not going to pay you anymore. and I couldn't do anything but laugh. You know, because there's only really, I don't know how many other people just stopped. They didn't fire you, right? There's not paying you. It reminded me of this scene that maybe some of you guys remember.
You know, squirrely looking guy, mumbles a lot.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we can't actually find a record of him being a current employee here.
I looked into it more deeply, and I found that apparently what happened is that he was laid off 5 years ago, and no one ever told him about it. But for some kind of glitch in the payroll department, he still gets a paycheck.
So we just went ahead and fixed the glitch.
Correct. So Milton has been let go.
Well, just a second there, Professor.
We fixed the glitch. So he won't be receiving a paycheck anymore, so it'll just work itself out naturally.
We always like to avoid confrontation whenever possible. Problem is solved from your end.
I'd like to move us right along to...
Right. That's why I laughed, because my head just immediately went to that scene. And I was blown away, and I told some of the youth, you know, they were sitting there, and I got the text, and we prayed. You know, we said, you know, and I knew God would take care of me. But many of you have been in that situation, or even in that situation now, where, man, you know it's coming to an end at a job, or you don't know what's going to happen. And so we prayed, and I played it tough, you know, in front of all the youth, and even when I got back to church, you know, nothing's going to stop me, nothing's going to tear me down. And I went to church that next Sunday, and I didn't say probably 5 words to anybody that was on the board, barely looked at them. You know, and I realized, man, there was something I was dealing with inside, but I was playing so tough, and I was being so hard. And then, you know, those people in your life that can just see right through you. You know, and my grandma walked in to that church, and she just looked at me and she stopped me and she said, "Carson, is everything all right?" Man, I just lost it. You know, I just ran out of there and got in my car and I just cried. Because, you see, that church, it was my family. You know, and so I wasn't worried about what God was going to do, really, with me. I knew He'd take care of me. But I felt so much hurt from these people because that was the church I grew up in my whole life. You know, and so these are the very people that were praying for me and reaching out to me and trying to help me. And when I was far away from the church, that wanted me back and would call me. And I just felt discarded.